So who inspired you to be a gospel artist?
Oh, that had to be my dad. Yeah, because he was a gospel singer before I was born, and like I said, he took me with him to rehearsals, and that was just there. And because he was on a gospel label called Hob Records out of New York, uh, we had all different types of different styles of gospel. So we had Shirley Caesar, we had the Caravans, James Cleveland, the Hawkins Singers. Then later along came the Winans and the Clark Sisters. And so I was just surrounded by all different styles. That's why my music, when you listen to an album, you're not going to get just one style, because I've listened to so many, so they all had a heavy influence. Chip on my shoulder. I got something to prove, like a gun in a holster. Loaded, ready to shoot. Got big energy. Ain't scared to dream. Got big energy. Got big energy.
All right, guys, we got a good one today, an awesome one. We got a legend. My guest is a woman of God with multiple gifts and talents working to magnify the King of Kings through the power of her voice. My guest is originally from Boston, Mass., but spent the majority of her life in Sumter, South Carolina. Hey, guys, I think she's Jamaican, and she does it all. She's a radio host, executive producer, a record label owner, author, a gospel artist. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for my guest, Miss Shonda English, a.k.a. the Gospel Diva. Welcome to the Miller Experience. We have a legend today, Miss Shonda English, a.k.a. the Gospel Diva. How you doing, Miss English?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, before we get started, I got a question to ask you.
What's that?
You're a Jamaican? I mean, you do everything. You got radio. You're an author. You're an artist. You got your own record label. You're executive producer. You do it all. What else you do? You cut hair? You
no,
do hair all that?
No. That's enough. That list right there. Yeah, I've been blessed with many gifts. I wear many hats, and it keeps me busy.
Got you. Tell us about Miss Shonda English. I know you're from Boston, Mass. What made you come to the great state of Sumter, South Carolina?
My father.
Your father?
My father's from Sumter, South Carolina. My mother's from Charles, South Carolina.
Okay.
They met in New York.
Okay.
And he was in the military and
Air Force?
Army.
Army, okay.
And then moved to Boston. That's where my sisters and I were born. And then God told him, you got to go back home. And that's how we ended up here.
Now, was he in the ministry then, or? Okay.
He was. He was in the ministry, and that's what happened. He was on his knees praying, and God told him, you got to go back home. And he was reluctant, did not want to go. I mean, when he left, it was segregated. Yeah. And you in Boston, and, you've got all of these opportunities. He had his own bookstore. He had a high position in the ministry. And God was like, yeah, you got to give all that up and go back home. So why would you want to do that?
Yeah.
He did not. He dragged his feet a bit. And he never told us what it was that he saw, but God told him to turn around and look. And he looked and he saw whatever it was that he saw. He was like, okay. And so he moved all of us. He packed up and said, we got to go back. And that's how we ended up here.
How do you feel about that?
I hated
that time.
it.
You hated it?
I was a little girl, but I remember my mother and my older sister, Cheryl, they got physically sick. Homesick led to being actually sick. And I just didn't like the South because I wasn't used to bugs. I wasn't used to dirt roads. I was like, we can't skate on this. What are you? Yeah. And let me tell you, it's a quick story, and I tell it every now and then. Across the street, there was a neighbor. He had a granddaughter, and she and I would play, and there was this big knot, like a hole in the tree. And I'm poking it. I'm like, oh, y'all, you see this worm? And so I run in the house. I said, Mom, Dad, there's a worm in the tree. And it was like, okay. Yeah. So I go back and I'm poking it, and it moved. And I said, oh. And so I ran back. I said, the worm licked its tongue at me. They looked at each other, get in this house. That's not a worm. Yeah. That's a snake. I didn't know.
Yeah. That's funny. How long did it take you to get used to living in the country? Sumter, South Carolina. How long did it take you?
It took me a while, a few years. But I'm not an outdoor person. But I'm used to it now. But I still love the city. So every chance I get, I go to Chicago or back to Boston. I even love Houston.
Yeah.
So I love the city. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like me. I mean, I grew up in Manning, but during my adolescent age and my teenage years and half of my adult life, early adult life, I lived in Jacksonville, Florida. So when I did come back to Manning and Sumter, it took me a while to readjust. I'm used to that city life. You know, you got to go, 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 go. I still got, heavy foot on the gas sometime in the car. But so you're a very talented human being. At the age of 3, you were singing on a kids choir, children's choir?
Yeah, children's choir at Holy Tabernacle Church of God in Christ in Boston, Massachusetts, playing my little red tambourine.
And then at 5, you was playing the piano?
Yeah,
you taught yourself, right?
Well, it was a gift from God.
Yeah.
We had already moved to South Carolina at this time. My mother and my sister, they took piano lessons. I was too young. And I was on the piano. My father used to take me with him to rehearsals, when we were still in Boston. So a lot of things were in my head, I guess implanted, But I was at the piano one day and realized, when I move my hand, I can kind of make a melody. And I don't know what song it was. My mother said, "What are you playing?" And I told her. She was like, "Who taught you that?" I said, "I don't know."
Wow.
And so when my father got home, she was like, "William T., listen to what Shonda did." And he was like, "Who taught you that?" I said, "I don't know." Wow. And so it was a God-given gift, and it developed over time.
That's amazing. Wow. So it didn't take you no time to catch on. You always had that voice, the angelic voice. You always had the skills on the piano, right? It didn't take you no time to catch on with everything.
Well, my father was like, "I want you to understand what you're doing." So he sent me to Professor Albert Linton to, actually know my notes, my chords, and, make sense of what I'm doing. He tried to teach me how to read music, and he told my mother it's not going to work because when she hears what it sounds like, she's going to do it. And so, but he did, he taught me music theory, and so I learned how to do that through him. And then Dr. Shonda Sepulveda basically helped with vocal training, teaching me different things. And I was like, so I was introduced to the right people to enhance the gift that God already gave.
This episode is sponsored by Aftermath Lawn Service and Landscaping, mowing, mulching, straw, pressure washing, and more. You can call owner Edward Brown at 803-464-7605. Again, that's 803-464-7605. Train So Hard University, where it's just not a movement, it's a lifestyle. You can contact myself, Excalibur Miller, on Facebook, or my Instagram, The Miller Experience, or you contact my brother, T. Miller, on Facebook, or on Instagram, Prodigal Son 36. If you're interested in being a sponsor for Shop Talk or The Miller Experience, you can contact myself, Ernest Miller, at 803-565-9752, or you can hit me up on my email at eaenestmiller83@gmail.com. You can also make contact with my producer, Victor Wesley of Vic West Production. His telephone number is 803-225-0021. Also, his email address is vicwestp@gmail.com.
So growing up, was it nothing but gospel music playing in your house?
It better have been.
You can't hear the worldly music? None of that was playing?
My mama say, "Ain't no devil music in the house." But they made a mistake when they came out with the Walkman.
Yeah. So besides gospel, right? So besides gospel, what else? What kind of genre of music do you like?
Well, now it's really just, gospel. I'm bombarded with it.
Growing up.
But growing up, I would, on my little Walkman.
Yeah.
And then I'm the youngest, so by the time I got to 8th grade, everybody, like my sisters, were out of the house. Yeah. So I had the whole upstairs to myself. Gotcha. So I'm like, you snuck and did things that you weren't supposed to do. But I would listen to Luther Vandross and Anita Baker. And then I guess I had an old soul because really, I loved Earth, Wind, and Fire and the Emotions. And I'm like, that was like before my time, but I loved what I heard, And that's kind of how I did it.
So who inspired you to be a gospel artist?
Oh, that had to be my dad. Because he was a gospel singer before I was born. And like I said, he took me with him to rehearsals. And that was just there. And because he was on a gospel label called Hob Records out of New York, we had all different types of different styles of gospel. So we had Shirley Caesar, we had the Caravans, James Cleveland, the Hawkins Singers. Then later along came the Winans and the Clark Sisters. And so I was just surrounded by all different styles. That's why my music, when you listen to an album, you're not going to get just one style, because I've listened to so many, so they all had a heavy influence. I think my favorite is choir music, though, Reverend Milton Brunson and the Thompson Community Singers. I love choir. I'm a choir girl.
So, you graduated from Sumter High. You earned a bachelor's arts degree in elementary education from the University of South Carolina Upstate. In 2013, you left the classroom to pursue your music career full-time and began your first novel,
Only's Coffee.
Only's Coffee.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Tell me, first of all, was the kids that bad? Was they bad? I mean, let's be honest. You ain't teaching no more. Let's be honest.
No. They were, for me, I love high school. I love the teenagers.
Really?
I'm not the person. I'm not made for little kids. I don't even have kids. Okay. So I'm not made for the little ones that need to be hugged, and when they cry and they want you to kiss their boo-boos. I don't.
Yeah.
That's just not me. just go on. And then middle school, I did my student teaching with middle school, and they just couldn't figure out if they wanted to be grown, if they wanted to be kids. And my first actual, when I taught at Bates, I taught 8th grade. And that was
God
close.
Yeah, God bless.
I taught 8th grade. They thought they were grown. And so, that was okay. But when I got to high school, I said, this is where I need to be. Because, those teenagers, they really think they're grown. And I have a smart mouth.
Hey, let me tell you.
So we would go back to back. And but they respected me, They respected me because they know I'm not. Don't mess with Miss Shonda. They didn't even say Miss English. Yeah. They would call me Miss Shonda, which was fine. They did their work, and if somebody got out of line, I'm like, okay, you can leave. Bye.
So when you left, how long you been teaching?
Oh, I taught 1, 2, 3, about 5 or 6 years.
5 or 6 years. So, what made you want to leave? Did you have an opportunity to sign a record deal?
Okay. I tried twice. I tried leaving twice. The first time I left was, I want to say 2012. And during the Christmas break, because I really wanted to pursue the music. That was why. I was getting burned out trying to teach and do the music, because the music career requires a lot of weekend traveling. And then you've got to prepare for that. But then on the weekends, you need to be doing your planning, your lesson plans to teach, So it was just, I was burned out. So I left, and the principal said, I need you to come back because the teacher quit. So the kids ran off.
Oh, man.
And they did it 2 years in a row.
See what I'm talking about?
They did it 2 years in a row. I'm like,
wow.
And I told them, I said, listen, you all have to graduate. Y'all can't keep doing this, But they were being real with me. They felt that, that the teachers didn't have their best interests, and they knew that I cared for real. So
that's all some of these kids need, is some adult that cares.
To be continued. Make sure you check out the next episode. And also you make sure you like, subscribe, and comment on my YouTube channel, The Mill Experience. And now we also on Spotify, Apple, and Amazon. Make sure you download. Peace. You can't tell me how to act. Said I can't be successful by sticking messages and rap. But God's with me. Who told you being intelligent is whack? So place your bets. My faith is fresh. I'ma make it stretch. Cause I sat there eye to eye with the face of death. And you ain't putting work